This video captures highlights from the Keep the Promise Town Hall meeting in Ottawa, November 18, 2014. 60 students from across Canada, grades 5 to 8, gathered with invited members of Parliament to discuss child poverty, to ask them why more than 1 million Canadian children are living in poverty, and to learn about the federal party's plans to do something about it. 3 federal parties sent representatives to the town hall to respond to the children's questions. Unfortunately, no one was available from the Conservative Party.
Hello everyone, my name is Leanne from Children of the Earth School in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I am a member of the Ojibwe Nation. I want to acknowledge that we are gathering today to the traditional territory of the Algonquin First Nation.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenesha from Elmwood High School in Winnipeg, Manitoba. On behalf of all of us here, welcome to our town hall.
Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle William de l'école Victor Brodeur à Esquimalt, Victoria, Colombie-Britannique. Nous voulons vous souhaiter à tous le bienvenue à notre forum de discussion.
The procession of the students and guests will be led in the Honorable James Bartleman in the carrying of the national flag. I am pleased to introduce the MCs for the Town Hall, Michael Cook, the project coordinator for the Keep of the Promise, and Diana Woloshuk, the president of the Canadian Teachers Federation.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to all of the students for doing that introduction, of all of you that have come here from every corner of our country to be here for this student summit and for the town hall. It's an honor for me to be one of your MCs this afternoon, along with Michael, as we embark on this short but meaningful journey about child poverty in Canada. This journey will take us across Canada, from as far north as the Yukon, as far west as British Columbia, and as far east as Newfoundland. Thanks to you, dear students, for sharing your ideas and for making your voices heard. We will listen. Thank you for inviting us to share in this story. We will hear your voices from every part of the country. We see your faces of hope, and we will share your dreams for the future as we strive to work collectively to bring an end to child poverty. Chers amis, aujourd'hui est un événement marquant. L'objectif du sommet et du forum de discussion ouverte est d'apprendre et de comprendre les effets de la pauvreté sur la vie des enfants et sur leur avenir. C'est aussi l'occasion d'examiner ce qu'est la citoyenneté et comment nous, en tant que citoyennes et citoyens, pouvons travailler pour apporter des changements tels que la pauvreté des enfants. The focus of the summit and the town hall is learning, understanding the effects of poverty on the lives of children and on their futures, understanding what citizenship is, and how we as citizens can work for change, change that will help to build a stronger, healthier nation.
I want to begin by acknowledging the incredible courage and leadership of the students who have taken the stage and who will take the stage in the course of this town hall. Ils démontrent un courage, une possibilité de leadership, une imagination et une vision pour notre pays qui est merveilleux et qui est un exemple pour nous tous. So hats off to the children. And I want to disabuse anybody who might think that somehow we have come to an end point. This summit and this town hall are a beginning. And it's a long road ahead. Laurel and her folks with Campaign 2000 can tell you There's been a long road behind, and there's a long road ahead. Luckily, this room is majority filled with people who've got tons of energy and tons of years ahead of them to lead us on that road. And we are going to listen to them. We are going to listen to their imagination. We are going to listen to their ideas. And we are going to ask ourselves, how can we support them both while they're here in Ottawa, but particularly when they return to their communities to continue this journey. And I want to particularly lift up something that we all know and that we've all experienced, and that is the power of the children's voice. That's what this is all about. And if there's any hope of cracking through the barriers and the multitude of excuses about why we can't end child poverty, if there's any hope of doing that, I think it is by listening to the voices of the children. Voices that speak with integrity, voices that speak in plain language, des voix qui parlent du cœur, des voix qui parlent sans équivocation et sans la complexité dans laquelle nous arrivons à enterrer les réalités à résoudre. And I am convinced, and I think history shows it, adults will ultimately listen, and they will ultimately be moved to act. Upstairs in the library where we've been meeting in the Learning Commons, there's a quote on the wall from Gabriela Mistral, and it ends with, "You, the children, your name is today. My name is yesterday, but your name is today, and we need to work with you to create tomorrow." Merci.
At this time, I'd like to invite Julian Hanlon, Director of Education with the Ontario Catholic School Board, to bring greetings on behalf of the board.
Good afternoon, and I'd like to say a warm welcome to Ottawa, but I wouldn't be talking about the weather, but welcome to Ottawa anyway. It's great to see everybody here, and especially to those people that have traveled from across the country. Hopefully your stay in Ottawa is very enjoyable. As has already been mentioned, as a school board and as an educator, unfortunately we see firsthand the impact of child poverty on a daily basis, and in particular how that affects a student's ability to be successful when they come to school. So as a school board, when we were asked to help get involved in this conference at the town hall, it was a natural fit for things that we're trying to do on a regular basis. We've made a commitment as a board to try and alleviate child poverty within our school system. We have a foundation, it's a not-for-profit foundation. It raises about $400,000 a year, and all that money goes to alleviating poverty within our school board. So it tells you the scope of the problem when one school board in Ottawa, one of 4 school boards in Ottawa, is putting that kind of money into alleviating child poverty, and we're certainly not meeting the demands that we see on a daily basis. The second reason we were glad to get involved in this conference is that we firmly believe that student voice is a big part of what we need to do as a school board. Promote student voice, listen to the young people to hear. They have lots of ideas, and they're very much in tune with the problems that exist. So when you look at those two things, as I said, it was a natural fit for us to get involved in this conference. We're very pleased to be hosting it here at one of our high schools, and I'm looking forward to hearing the students present. I heard it was a great day today and lots of good discussion and activity. So thank you, and once again, welcome to Ottawa.
We're talking about voices, and of course there are many, many voices in the room. But there's lots of people across Canada who share the vision and the concern that we have. And we have 3 messages from a variety of people who couldn't be here today, but who want you to hear their voice. Let's go with the first video.
Listen up, Canada. We need to talk. Didn't you make us a promise?
Didn't you say we have to keep our promises?
You said nothing was more important than the well-being of children.
You said kids are the future of Canada.
In 1989, you promised
that no kid in our country would live in poverty after the year 2000.
But 1 in 7 of us still do.
1 in 7.
1 in 7.
What does that mean for 1 in 7 of us?
Going to school on an empty stomach.
Pretending I forgot my lunch.
Being afraid to tell my mom I need new shoes.
Some of us don't even have a place to go home to.
We don't care whose fault it is. We just really, really need your help to fix it.
You made a promise.
You have to keep it.
And we're here today to mark the 25 years that have passed since the unanimous motion was made in the House in 1989 to end child poverty by the year 2000. Here's a little refresher for you.
Whatever their philosophical basis, whether Canadians are conservatives or liberals or New Democrats, I know there isn't the slightest bit of difference in terms of their commitment to the well-being of children. However else we may differ on other political matters, and the differences are real and serious, on this issue there is no difference. On the commitment to overcoming child poverty, I believe there would be no difference about the goal. We have the resources, we have the ability. We've done it before on pensions. We've done it before on Medicare. What we need now is to demonstrate the same will concerning the needs of our children. Quelle sorte de visage a la pauvreté?
What sort of face does poverty have? Small babies, dangerously thin. It's death. Death of the babies. The babies of poor mothers die at a rate 2 times higher than the babies of wealthier mothers.
Mr. Speaker, we must take up our obligations now. We must show that for us human dignity is to be cherished as much in life's first pages as it is in the concluding chapters. I simply say it's time to match the rhetoric with action. For the sake of our children, let us find that same spirit of reform, of hope, of courage, of tenacious intelligence that has led this nation of ours to great accomplishments in the past. Let us affirm today in this Parliament that as a nation, by the beginning of the 21st century, only 11 years away, child poverty in this great Canada will be a relic of the past. Thank you very much.
There was one individual who took it particularly seriously. Her picture's up there on the wall, June Colwood. And she's part of the inspiration of why we're here today. And here's a little message and a very familiar backdrop to the message.
Hello, all you beautiful people promising to keep the promise. It is so good to see you. My name is George Strombolopoulos. Hi to all the students. There's over 60 of you, and the teachers, over 25 of you from all across this glorious land, all the provinces and all the territories. And listen, I understand when you see that many students outnumbering that many teachers, You're just like, we don't have to listen to them. It's a good idea to listen to them in this one. And you probably will, because you're all such exceptional leaders and such interesting kids to begin with in the first place. I've read some of your essays. I know you know why you're there and what you understand. You understand poverty and the impact that poverty has on people's lives. No money, no hockey. Sometimes it makes things way more difficult. Sometimes going to school with no breakfast. And I know you all truly understand that. And that's why you're going to have such a great time at this event. And you're going to hear the name June Colwood. It's going to be talked about a lot throughout this summit. And some of you may say, who is June Colwood, and why should I even remember the name of this person, or why should I know the name of this person who maybe passed away, you know, before you were old enough to understand who she could be? But let me tell you something about June. June knew what it was like to live in poverty, had to quit school when she was 15 years old just to keep her family together and help raise money for them. June operated from a place of kindness and compassion her entire life. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the work of June Colwood. So many people in Toronto wouldn't have had the opportunities they had without the work of June Colwood. June Colwood was the kind of person who was fighting for kids before they were even born, fighting for equality, fighting to help kids get out of poverty. She's one of the most glorious people I've ever been able to be near, and maybe my favorite interview in my entire life. June was an absolute joy, but June's not here now. Her legacy is. And the need for June's work is here. And that's where you come in. You go home after the summit. You be leaders in your community. You be leaders in your home. You're all making a huge difference. Congratulations, and please continue to shine.
So the moment that we've been waiting for, the moment where we get to hear what the students have to say, has arrived. And so I'd like to invite Devin and Aliana to come forward and give their introductory statement.
Eh bien, bonjour. On se disait que peut-être on allait débuter avec le français aujourd'hui. Je suis ici pour vous faire une introduction, un mot de bienvenue si vous voulez. Donc, juste merci d'avoir été venu à cette merveilleuse occasion. Personnellement, je suis très excitée d'y être. C'est vraiment un honneur d'être ici. Laissez-moi vous parler de ce qu'on a fait ici à ce sommet. Donc, nous avons tous fait de la recherche à nos écoles locales à propos de la pauvreté chez les enfants dans nos communautés. Donc, nous avons fait des recherches, nous avons pris des statistiques, nous avons regardé à des émissions, nous avons regardé tout ce qui a été à propos de ce sujet.
Good afternoon. My name is Aliana, and I go to the Leo Beck Day School in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm extremely excited to be here. We have all done research at our local school about child poverty in our communities, so we've discovered about the child poverty, and we have all shared the results of our research on an interactive map of Canada. We've shared our learning with one another at this summit. We've considered child poverty under these headings such as food, education and recreation, housing and shelter, employment, and local and regional considerations, such as childcare, immigration, Aboriginal communities, transportation, and geographical considerations. After our sharing this morning, we came to a consensus about how to prioritize these areas. Each of these areas are very important, and priorities will vary from many to our communities, but we have ranked these areas according to. So what we did was we ranked food as one of our most important priorities because we can't survive without food. But every single other idea like education and recreation, housing and shelter, and employment, they're all linked to each other. They're all like one chain. So they're all kind of under the one umbrella. We all need these things to survive. And we came with a local perspective on child poverty, but we are leaving with a national perspective on our child poverty. So we have the questions to the MPs. Is there a plan in place right now to end child poverty that you are working on? And what do you recommend for moving forward on the 1989 promise, and how can we help? And we'd give you a 5-minute limit to do so. Thank you.
So now we'll proceed to hear the children speaking about the topics that they flagged: food, shelter, employment, education, recreation, and local and regional considerations. So I'd like to ask Margot and Georgia to come forward to talk to us about food.
Hi, I'm Margot.
And I'm Georgia.
In Toronto, with a population of 2.8 million, many people depend on food banks. There has been a 40% increase of visits to food banks since 2008. That makes me think. Many families across the GTA rely on the 200+ food banks to feed their families and provide for themselves.
My community is Hinds Creek, Alberta, with a population of 394 people, and 200 of them go to my school. The closest food bank in my community is 28 kilometers away.
We are one of the lucky schools in Toronto, Duke of Connaught, to have a breakfast program.
We also have a breakfast program club in Hinds Creek. We serve toast, cheese whiz, and jam. We go through 1/2 to 2 loaves of bread a day.
The people in Toronto who are using food banks include highly educated but underemployed newcomer families living in barely affordable apartments. We are also seeing single senior citizens with disabilities who are struggling to live on a fixed income.
The distance to the nearest food bank makes it difficult for the people in my community to access it.
Learning is difficult without food in children's stomachs. It makes it so difficult to concentrate on the lesson being taught while children are focused on how hungry they are or when their next meal will be.
If you don't have enough food when you are in school, it is difficult to learn. You could be at risk of not graduating. And without a solid education, it is hard to get a good job.
Thus causing a ripple effect throughout students' lives.
Hi, I'm Maxwell. I'm from Iqaluit, Nunavut.
I'm Jasmine, and I'm from Fairview, Alberta.
And we're here to talk to you about shelter and the impact it has on child poverty. I live in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and the population of this town is over 7,000. In my community, everyone has access to temporary shelter. There are 3 temporary shelters: an all-day domestic abuse shelter for women and children, an all-day women's homeless shelter for women and their children, and an overnight men's shelter. If a mother, father, and their children need temporary housing, they would not be able to stay together.
I live in Fairview, Alberta. The population is about 3,150. In my community, only women and children have access to our 1 temporary shelter.
In Iqaluit, the shelters are located in central areas throughout our community that are accessible from anywhere in town. We don't have public transit, but people can walk, drive, or take a taxi. Children living in a shelter can walk to any of our local schools, but there is no shelters that are far from any of our grocery stores.
I could walk across Fairview in 30 minutes. So if you were living in the women's shelter, it's easy to access schools and groceries. We don't have taxis or buses in Fairview.
As I listened to other children discuss their communities across Canada today, one student shared that his community in Newfoundland lacked shelters altogether.
The community next to mine has no shelter or food bank, so they would have to come to Fairview, but the lack of public transit makes this very difficult. We need to remember that people who do not have houses or apartments may not have what they need inside their house, like heat, water, and electricity. I think that having a permanent shelter would make me more motivated to go to school, because I wouldn't want to tell my classmates that I walked to school from a shelter.
My name's Danielle.
And I'm Trinity.
In Victoria, BC, the unemployment rate is 6% for a population of 340,000.
In Ottawa, the unemployment rate is 6.9 for a population of 870,000. Across the nation, there is a variation in unemployment rates from as high as 31 to as low as 4.
In my community of Victoria, I learned that people who do not have a good education find it difficult to find a job.
The unemployment rate in Ottawa has traditionally been stable with few fluctuations. However, unemployment is high among our youth.
Some people rely on relatives to help with housing. Food banks are a source of food. Some people even stay in shelters for a long period of time.
Employment is definitely a top priority. You can't afford to pay for your essential needs. Food, shelter, any other of the ones that that have been and will be presented. You can't afford to pay for them if you don't have a job.
Thank you.
Well, we start to discuss the effect on poverty has on education and recreation. The first thing we had to ask ourselves was, does poverty have an effect on education? And all our groups composed of the students across Canada, very quickly we decided that yes, it was an issue. In our communities and school where we come from, as well as our communities that other students and our conferences came from, we can all see that the effect of poverty on education and recreation every day.
The first thing we considered was how living in poverty negatively affects a student's success at school. The first thing that we noticed was how students who are in poverty may have less access to good food, which can reduce their academic performance. Several students mentioned how it was proven that the lower level of nutrition relates to a lower level of academics. We also remarked that some students can be embarrassed by their appearance or possessions because their family can't afford the same things that others can. This can lead to bullying and other social problems that can negatively affect their performance at school. Students who are living in poverty also have fewer recreational options because so many sports and activities can be very expensive. Finally, student success at school can be negatively affected by poverty if they have no power or other amenities at home that would help them to complete their homework and come to school prepared.
We also asked ourselves how extra cost materials to participate in school activities are provided. We noticed that some of these expenses are covered by schools, but most of them have to be covered by parents or fundraising. This can cause a problem for students who are living in poverty because it limits them from being involved. Some participants in our groups also mentioned that schools and other groups work to help these things for children who can't afford them.
One last question we looked at was how access to technology due to poverty affects people in our community. We agreed that greater access to high priority technology, like a computer, is very important. But we also noticed that there is a pressure to have other technologies, like a cell phone or tablets. One student commented, in rural areas, there can be less access than in urban areas where public technology access points like libraries or schools open late hours. We also noticed that an important point was that kids in poverty sometimes have to work late instead of going to school or doing their homework, which can take away their right to just be a kid and to participate and succeed in school.
In conclusion, living in poverty has a negative effect in communities all across the country. The concerns are different for people in different places, but they cause a problem everywhere.
Hello, my name is Shane.
And my name's Lucas.
In Manitoba, there are several First Nation reserves. On these reserves, there is flooding, lack of clean water, and the conditions are poor. We know that child poverty is double for First Nations children compared to national average. Manitoba ties with BC for the highest child poverty rate in Canada.
In my community of Portugal Cove St. Phillips, Newfoundland, there are no food banks and no shelters. We have no public transit to access the nearest food bank 20 minutes away by car.
In Winnipeg, we have approximately 106 food banks and emergency programs.
In my community in Newfoundland, children have to go to private daycare that is not subsidized, with an average cost of $1,400 a month. Even if you are in school full-time, the cost is close to full-time daycare with a 2-year waiting list.
In Manitoba, children often come to school without proper winter clothing. Some students do not have access to nutritious foods or up-to-date technology.
In Newfoundland, in my school, we do not have a breakfast program, and our lunch program is not subsidized.
Donc, voici mes 3 questions. Premièrement, y a-t-il un plan en place, un plan sur lequel vous travaillez présentement pour éliminer la pauvreté chez les enfants? Ensuite, quelles recommandations faites-vous pour faire avancer ce dossier qui date d'une promesse faite en 1989? Et dernièrement, comment pouvons-nous vous aider dans l'avancement de ce dossier? Merci.
As I said before, the questions that we'd like to ask you are, is there a plan in place right now to end child poverty that you are working on? Question 2, what do you recommend for moving forward on the 1989 promise? And question 3, how can we help?
But each of the things that you've described actually require a plan that understands how they're all interconnected. That if people are spending too much on their housing, then they don't have enough left for food. If people are hungry, then they don't learn well at school. And if they don't have a computer, they aren't able to do well at school. And so I was very impressed at how you've already organized it such that any national plan to deal with child poverty needs to deal with all of these things that you have pointed out. So we're very pleased that we've worked very hard on a national food strategy for Canada. We don't think that there should be hungry kids. And Mark Eiking, who's here joining me, I think was at the Food Secure Canada conference this weekend in Halifax, and how important it is that as a farmer, he also understands that people should be able to earn a living on their farms, but that we actually want to make sure that there are no hungry kids from coast to coast to coast. And I guess right now we also feel that it's appalling that even on our military bases that some of our soldiers and their families are having to go to food banks. So we believe that from coast to coast to coast that you actually need a food strategy for Canada that obviously includes the really different regional reality of in the north and in rural and remote Canada. I think on a housing strategy, we know that we're very blessed now to have Adam Vaughan in our caucus, who's been working very hard on what a national housing strategy would look like. And like we heard from the young people, that also means shelters, but it means transitional housing, it means getting to independent housing, and all of that cooperative housing. All of those things are part of us finding affordable housing for Canadians, and that needs a very specific, again, realization of the difference between downtown Toronto, where I live, to where you live in Iqaluit. So it's where's my friend from Iqaluit? Over there, yeah. So it is, I think, also hugely important that as we look to the dignity of employment and how, in all my years as a family doctor, I felt that people were highly motivated, would rather be working. I don't think in this country we believe an approach to employment is just asking people to move to where the jobs are. We know that whether you're in Cape Breton or whether you're in Newfoundland or in Quebec City, you don't think that you should have to move away from your supports of your extended family in order to be able to get a job, and that means a regional development program, but it also means governments need to invest in infrastructure and all of the things that actually can create jobs very quickly without dealing with creating a structural deficit that means that governments get into trouble. I think that we're very keen that on the recreation and sports and education, I think that we want to be able to work with the provinces to figure out how schools could be open longer hours and how we can actually make sure that all of those facilities are there in terms of recreation, computers, libraries, and all the things that really matter. And I guess I just want to say that as we work towards the platform on all of these, Justin Trudeau's very keen that there are many, many people in the room, including the voices of the children, that mean that we have to be able to tap into the expertise and the lived experience to make sure that all of you will be part of that. Just as June Callwood said, that if you're an observer to an injustice, you are indeed a participant. All of you already know you're a participant in this fight. We're going to make sure that all Canadians understand that they're a participant in this fight against child poverty. Thank you for being here.
Ani, Peshe Dijnakas, Ganabajing, and Jabayan. I just said hello. My name is Robin, and I am from Serpent River First Nation, and Robin is my spirit name. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the Green Party to represent our very busy one Green Member of Parliament, Elizabeth May. Oh, sorry. I want to talk generally, I think, about poverty and looking at some of the work that's been done and some of the writings that are out there on this issue. And I just wanted to say that I think it's time in Canada that we change the way we do politics. Because this is an issue that requires collaboration across party lines. It's something that it doesn't have a place in partisan politics. And I really like to see that clip of Ed Broadbent, the leader of the NDP at the time, who talked about political will and talked about working together in government for the better of the country. The reasons for poverty are indeed complex, but solutions are simple. And we have to have cooperation. And we've done this before on other social programs in this country when we were committed to cooperating with a focus. We had focus and we had political will to drive that process.
Paul Dewar.
Thank you. Great to be here. C'est un extrême honneur d'être ici parmi vous et grand bienvenue à tous et toutes viennent ici à Ottawa. I just wanted to say what a great honor it is to be here with you today and to welcome everyone here to Ottawa. This is actually, we're in the riding I represent. I live about 2 minutes away from here. And I have to declare my conflict of interest. I'm a former teacher. When we talk about the promise that you want to get us to keep, I think it's really important that we think about what kind of country we want. We want a country that you can grow up in that doesn't have this kind of disparity, this unequal business between some of your friends and you. Think about it. 25 years ago, that film clip we saw, members of parliament voted, every single one of them together. That doesn't happen often, right? To say that we were going to deal with this, we were going to fulfill a promise, and we didn't. The promise remains unkept. Successive governments have failed to follow through on our collective pledge. And so, as I mentioned, we have almost 1 million children living in poverty. And you think about it, that's totally unconscionable in a country like Canada. It's time to end child poverty. It's long past time, we agree. And I'm glad to see my colleague Ratika is here. She's at the front. And she has reintroduced Ed Broadbent's motion to the House of Commons. She just did. We're debating that in the House of Commons. And I think it's high time she did, and I thank her for that. And let me be very concrete about what it does, and to answer the question of our students. What this motion says and what our plan is with the NDP is, 1, making housing more affordable for low-income Canadians. 2, ensuring accessible and affordable childcare. Our proposal, we just announced this recently, a national childcare plan that would offer Canadians, families, all families right across the country, access to quality childcare, and that no one would pay more than $15 a day for their childcare. And this plan would actually create a lot of jobs and help a lot of kids. Number 3, addressing childhood nutrition. Canada should be actively working to increase nutrition options for Canadian families. And I have to say this, rather than rejecting the UN Food Rapporteur who is here to report on Canada. 4, improving economic security for families. The NDP has put forward the idea of a $15 an hour minimum wage so we can lift up those who are working right now, many jobs, but not enough to actually pay for the basics. 5, and we touched on this, the presenters did, focus on our First Nations. After all, they kept our country like it is or was for just 400 years ago when Europeans came here. They were the keepers of our land, making sure our water was clean. We've broken a promise with them to actually include them in our society. So we need to focus on First Nations and help them be left out of poverty with solutions that are based on their inputs. And finally, let's measure this. You guys, you get your report cards, right? Well, we think the same thing should happen with this motion, and Radek has put that forward. The final piece of this idea in the legislation is to have measurable targets and timelines so that you can go to us and say, you didn't pass, you failed, and you come to us and say, what are you going to do about it? So we want to have measurable timelines. That's our commitment.
And at this time, I'd like to invite Laurel Rothman from Campaign 2000 to address our town hall.
Thanks, everybody. Well, I just have to say right away, what terrific learning and input from all of our students. So quickly, as Michael said earlier, Campaign 2000 indeed has been doing report cards kind of from the outside. After when 1989 came around, 3 or 4 organizations sat around a table and said, if we don't do something with this motion, it really will just sit on a shelf. Somebody said, let's do a report card. Well, in those days, it was kind of unusual for the community to grade governments on how they did or didn't perform. And we've been doing it every year for 23 years at the federal level, and about 6 of our provincial partners do it in each of their provincial capitals. So we try to, and we are the front lines. We're a group of groups representing teachers, child care and housing providers, low-income people themselves, faith communities, unions, friendship centers, food banks, many others. So people who often see very much daily the pain and discomfort of poverty among children and families. So, and we also learned that we have to propose solutions. So we do that along working with many of you in this room. And we have had a few successes, but while public policy, we have the National Child Benefit, we have a child disability benefit that has had some impact. We have had various points in time of success on affordable housing, but not enough and not sustained long enough. I quite agree with all of our speakers who said we should not be where we are today, and we don't have to be. And that's where, of course, you come in. We need you. We need your new voices and energy. So I hope you'll continue to learn, speak out, as you've demonstrated you do very well, share your ideas, be in touch with each other. These days you have social media, you have the internet, things we didn't have in the old days of organizing. Share them with, and I'll help you connect to our local partner organizations in various communities. And make sure, I was just saying to one of the group today when we met with one of the MPs, in 5 or 6 years you'll be voting. So start paying attention, because that MP said to us, you can volunteer before you're eligible to vote, to learn about the process and see what it's all about. So, one last parting word from a very famous anthropologist, Margaret Mead, and many of you will know this. And I'm sort of paraphrasing when she said, never underestimate that a dedicated group of activists can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So keep it up, and good luck, and thank you.
I forgot at the very opening to welcome the hundreds, maybe thousands of people who are participating today via live stream. And so welcome to all of you who are watching us across the country, children, classmates, parents. I just got an email from 2 viewers who said, when those students got up and spoke, Claire and I started to cry. So thank you. I now want to introduce James Bartleman. And I hope many of you in the room know who he is and what he stands for, but just in case you need a reminder, c'est un homme qui connaît de première expérience la pauvreté. He grew up in poverty. He knows what it looks like face to face. And he's never forgot those lessons. Thanks to some people who cared about him and saw his potential, he was able to get an education. He went on to become a teacher. He then went on to become one of Canada's most distinguished diplomats. He's seen poverty in the face in his own life, and he's seen it around the world. He then became the Lieutenant Governor for Ontario. Thank you very much, Mr. Bartleman, for agreeing to be here.
Well, thank you very much for including me in this program this afternoon. And I'm so happy to see members of the Canadian Teachers Federation here, because in my efforts in setting up reading camps in the North and other initiatives, it was the various Teachers Federations of Ontario which took the lead. And so I'm very, very happy to see you here today. Canada is the greatest country in the world, and I'm very proud to be a Canadian. And if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have served for 35 years as a representative of Canada on all 6 habitable continents. And if that hadn't been the case, I wouldn't have accepted the invitation to be Lieutenant Governor of Ontario for 5 years. But pride in country does not mean that a person should ignore the blind spots, the areas of shame, actually, in our national conduct. First is the general poverty afflicting so many children. The second is the particular plight of Native children, particularly in the North. As Paul Dewar mentioned, tonight there will be something like 10,000 Canadian children who will have no home to sleep in. And in Northern Ontario, the area that I know so well, having visited it so many dozens and dozens of times and running camps up there for reading and other things, children are, this month there will be at least 2 children who will kill themselves. There's been 25 kids killing themselves per year, year in and year out, for 25 years. The same length of time that this promise given by the parliamentarians has not been kept. And I traveled to the north of Ontario and discovered that these children were killing themselves because they had no hope. They lived in abject poverty that the images you see on television don't give justice to. This means a lot to me, as was mentioned, because I grew up in poverty, at least in the first 12, 15 years of my life. Our first home was a tent up by the village dump in Port Carling. Then we moved to an old shack, which I really began to love after a while, but it had no electricity, had no indoor plumbing, and came with its own resident ghost. So what we need, and this is, I think, the importance of the gathering of young people and this campaign of Keep the Promise, what we need is to have the children become the educators of their parents, and their parents to put pressure on governments and bring about a change, and to have those people who are not sincere about helping the poor and helping the Native people keep their promises. Miigwech.
This time I'd like to invite Keep the Promise co-chairs Mary Jo Leddy and Arthur Bielfeld to make closing remarks.
There have been many thank yous already said, many people named, and I won't repeat that. Many more other people need to be thanked. You know who you are. Suffice it to say that we are stronger and we are better for being here together today. Ces jours, nous connaissons la réalité de la pauvreté et aussi la puissance de solidarité. Tonight we conclude the town hall, but we are not finished. This gathering is not simply a photo op, not simply a fly-by-night operation, a news story. We are here about a promise, an important promise, a fabulous promise that was made and has yet to be kept. And keeping that promise will depend on the politicians, the ones you saw, the ones you haven't seen, and it will depend on all of us here. Most importantly, it will depend on the children of Keep the Promise and children throughout this country. You are the eyes of our eyes. You're the ears of our ears and the voice of our voice. I've lived for 25 years with refugee kids, and I have seen the world through their eyes. I know this promise still matters greatly, and we must honor it. We have many natural resources in this country. We have water, we have trees, we have wheat, we have oil. But our greatest natural resource is our children, beyond price and of great value. And we honor this today. So in closing, we invite you to continue in a reception that will be hosted, and we thank you for being here.
Well, after listening to you and Mr. Bartleman and Mary Jo Leddy, and reflecting on what has happened just in the first day of this occasion, this Summit on Child Poverty, what more can a rabbi say except
if anybody's going to say more, it's going to be a rabbi. And I can just hear my beloved colleague of many years, 25 years, we sat at meetings together. She's smiling down from you on the wall, from the wall just to my right. And I can hear her saying, Mary Jo, and he never gives me the last word. But in a way, she has the last word today. Because this morning I began by telling you about June Callwood, our great friend and social activist, who never gave up her hope that the poor children of this world would really see a brighter day. And I'm going to conclude by telling you a story that was written by one of the people she so greatly admired. His name may not be familiar to some of you, but it will be to others. He is called a child of the Holocaust. His name is Elie Wiesel. His whole life and his whole work is a sustained protest against the kind of indifference we've seen in this country towards children and child poverty over the past 25 years. And somehow that sense of sustained protest helped him to survive such terrible things that killed millions of other people that murdered them. And in all of that, as I reminded you this morning, despite the worst that any of us can imagine, this man remained a human being. That's why June so admired him. And here's the parable, here's the story that he tells. And I want to ask each of you to think of it and apply it to our situation, to yourselves. Elie Wiesel wrote that one day a righteous person wandered into biblical Sodom. Does that name sound familiar? Sodom. The city that was remembered in the Bible for its sinfulness. This righteous man knew what Sodom was all about, but still he was bewildered by so much wickedness and insensitivity. And he stood among the people with his mouth open, and suddenly he found himself preaching, and he said, "Please, don't be so silent to the suffering of your poor, and do not be indifferent to the needy." And this man who wandered almost by accident into biblical Sodom continued preaching day after day. And at first, the citizens of this legendary wicked city were so shocked by his message that they gathered around and listened. And before finally shaking their heads, at a certain point they grew tired of his rantings and his ramblings about justice and fairness and sensitivity, and they went back to their daily business, which was largely sinning in one form or another. And after a while, nobody paid much attention to him. But he wasn't discouraged. He went on preaching for days and weeks and months. One day, a child, probably no more than some of you, so no older than some of you, stood in front of this man, mesmerized by the scene of this guy preaching to an empty park, an empty space of listeners. And at a certain point, the child couldn't resist, and he tugged on the stranger's robe and he said, "Hey, mister, what are you doing? Don't you think? Don't you see it's of so little use what you're saying? There's no one listening to you anymore. They're tired of it." And the stranger replied, "I know you think that's so, but I have to go on, and I'll tell you why. in the beginning, I thought I had to protest and to picket and to shout out in order to change the world. But now, today, if I continue to cry out against injustice and poverty and insensitivity, it is to prevent the world from changing me. And I think that is a philosophy that June Callwood, in all of her difficulties, the loss of Casey we talked about this morning, the many problems she walked around of her own and bearing those of others on her shoulders, understood and agreed with. She knew that we have to cry out, in part because we believe that someday this world will change and that we will be part of it. But the other side of the picture is that if we don't cry out, if we are silent, if we cease to, when we see an injustice, to speak out against it, we will become a part of that world. And I must say, I have been so touched, so moved, so gratified by these young people and by all of you who have taken the time and the effort to come here and to keep the promise and to say to our politicians and our business leaders and our opinion makers and our clergy, you are not necessarily going to change the world, but we are. We someday will be sitting where we are today or in a bigger forum, and we will keep the promise that you made to us, even if you don't. May that be our legacy and our cry and our hope for all the days and the years that are to come. And let us all say, Amen.
Okay. So what was the highlight of your summit today and the town hall meeting today? What's important for you?
I enjoyed talking about the all the proper necessities that children need that they don't always get when they're in poverty, and what was the most important that they don't usually get, but what they need.
That's a great point. How about you? It could be about the summit this morning too. What did you discover today that you didn't know before?
That there's more child poverty in the world than I thought.
It's important to know. How about you? Okay, that's okay. Do you have an idea that you want to share? How about you? What do you think as a teacher? And how was the summit? What's your take back when you go back to Alberta? What will be important for you to take back?
Well, I think it's really important to empower the children to take leadership roles, and this summit has done exactly that. And what we will be taking back to our community is practicing creating opportunities for children to take those leadership roles, because they're going to be our leaders someday, and we need to start working with them so it's not brand new when they're adults.
Thank you. That's great. Any special plans? Do you plan on doing something when you get back now that you know a little bit more about poverty?
We have a whole 4-day thing planned out. The first day we do a clothes sale,
like an I've outgrown it sale. Second day is I don't play with it anymore sale,
which is toys.
Yeah. Third day is I don't need it sale, which is food, and then the last day is 24 hours outside living, experiencing what people in poverty are experiencing in real life.
This
it's all the same school. So the kids have come up with a week. And the first day, actually, the Monday, will be spent doing awareness for the whole school community, and then we'll move into the 4 days of events, and they will spearhead it. They're only 11 and 12, but they've got the passion for it, and they are very devoted and will do an awesome job.
Can you describe what was your high point today at Summit and the Town Hall?
Well, I think that it's really important to kind of get the word out about what we're doing, because it's such a big issue in Canada and amongst us, like our friends, our family. I guarantee at least with every person that one of their friends or one of their family members is living in poverty. And it's such a big problem, even amongst our schools, that I think the main point was to get the word out and get people involved with trying to end child poverty and keeping the promise that was made.
I don't think there was a high point exactly today, because it's all about the message and all of the activities we did as a collective from students all over Canada, and really learning from each other what child poverty looks like and what we can do to end it. There was no high point. It was throughout the day, and it was really nice brought up to tonight now.
A bit, yeah.
Where are you from?
Ontario, Toronto.
Yeah, we go to Duke of Connaught Public School.
So now what's the next thing? When you go back home, what's the plan?
Well, I think really what we're trying to take away from this is to take back all the information we've learned and what we've learned from other people and bring it into our classes and get them active in the campaign, and to bring it into our communities and eventually our province and Canada, to get everyone familiar with it and stuff. So yeah, really in our classes, and to get everyone there to aware of what's happening and everything. Yeah.
You want to add something?
We actually have a few specific plans. We will be rewriting to our local MPs about this issue, and we actually have a petition that we started. That we will also do a food drive with our sister schools in Toronto.
Yeah, we're trying to do, for the letters, we're trying to send them before the next meeting on the motion put forward to try and promote ending child poverty. So to write them before the 21st of January, to really get the MPs to kind of take a second look at it and really hear what the kids have to say.
Je pense que la pauvreté chez les enfants est une matière très importante, que les adultes puis les enfants de nos jours devraient savoir plus sur le sujet. Alors, si on a appris beaucoup de choses ici, puis on peut retourner à notre maison, puis dire à nos amis pour qu'ils connaissent plus sur le sujet, puis on peut aider.
Parfait, merci. Et vous?
Moi, je pense la même chose que Madeleine, mais je pense aussi savoir les histoires ou les idées des autres personnes, savoir plus comment la pauvreté affecte leur communauté au lieu de juste l'économie britannique. Et,
Merci.
Eh bien, personnellement, je trouve que tout ce qui a dû être dit a vraiment été dit, mais j'aimerais juste ajouter que vraiment, la pauvreté chez les enfants, c'est vraiment un désastre, et spécialement au Canada. Toutes les organisations ONG qui essaient de nous aider, ils sont merveilleuses, mais quand même, il faut quelque chose de plus. Il faut que le gouvernement nous aide et essaye d'éliminer la pauvreté chez les enfants. Vraiment, c'est quelque chose que c'est nécessaire à vraiment notre survie, car à la fin, ces enfants qui maintenant sont dans la pauvreté vont être les voix communes de la prochaine génération.
Merci, très bien.
Je crois que ça a été comme un sommet excellent, car ça sensibilise les enfants de notre génération qui vont être les prochains comme dirigeants de notre pays. Et si tu regardes les statistiques du taux de pauvreté en Canada, même en Victoria en général, c'est vraiment gros. Et la pauvreté chez les enfants en plus, c'est une bonne chose qu'on a attaqué ce sujet.
C'est bien, merci. Et vous, en tant qu'enseignante,
Premièrement, je suis très, très fière de mes élèves, de leur contribution. C'était absolument exceptionnel. Mais ce que j'aime, je pense que ce que je retire le plus de ce forum-là, c'est ce qu'eux vont pouvoir ramener. Ils connaissaient déjà la pauvreté. Je pense qu'ils comprenaient, dans un certain sens, que c'était. Mais là, je pense qu'ils ont l'impression d'avoir une mission en poche. C'est vraiment de faire quelque chose. Je pense que les phrases de June Callwood vont venir. Puis là, on sait qu'on doit participer quand on voit des injustices, tout ça. Je les sens comme messagers puis comme leaders dans ce domaine-là en Colombie-Britannique.
C'est bien, merci. Beau travail. Et vous, est-ce que vous avez quelque chose à ajouter? Lorsque vous allez retourner en Colombie-Britannique, qu'est-ce que vous ramenez? Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de faire avec vos élèves?
Bien, moi, je suis en charge du comité de justice sociale au Conseil scolaire francophone, je veux dire au niveau du syndicat. Et je veux continuer à parler de la pauvreté chez les enfants parce que c'est tellement triste de voir combien il y a d'enfants qui n'ont pas même assez à manger, qui n'ont pas assez pour s'habiller et tout ça. Et puis, il faut qu'on soit conscient. On n'a qu'à regarder à Victoria, Our Place, au mois d'octobre, on servait 28 000 repas dans un mois. Et puis ça continue de grandir. Puis là-dedans, il y a des enfants, il y a des gens plus vieux. Alors, il faut vraiment, là, on a tellement beaucoup de choses. Il faut qu'on commence à partager. Je pense que c'est ça le message. Puis je suis tellement contente d'être ici. Ça ouvre les yeux. Puis c'est intéressant d'entendre les réalités des autres endroits. Comme il y a une petite fille de l'Alberta, elle dit, nous, mon petit village, il y a 298 personnes. Puis elle dit, de ces 298, il y en a 200 qui viennent à notre école. C'était vraiment bien. Puis non, j'ai trouvé ça superbe. Merci de nous...
Bien, merci à vous pour avoir partagé vos idées. Merci. What was the highlight of your day today?
I got to go on stage and I got to bring up the flag for PEI. It was really fun.
So you're a long way from home, aren't you?
Yeah. And it was my first time off the island.
Oh my God. So how does poverty play out in your community? Do you see it? Do you see the impact of child poverty in your school?
Yeah, sometimes people did wear the same clothes the whole entire week.
And so when you're going to go back to the island, what are you going to do now? What do you take back?
I'm going to try and help the people that are in poverty. I didn't know as much until I went on this trip, so I can't wait.
Great. Well, thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No.
Anybody else would like to talk about your experience today?
It was really fun. I think I learned a lot about poverty and how I can help in my community.
Where are you from?
PDI.
PDI as well. All right. And so when you go back to school, now that you know all this stuff about child poverty, what are you going to do when you get back to school?
Share with my classmates and see if they want to help out.
Same like me.
Same as you.
I want to do the same thing.
We're in the exact same class. Me and Taylor were in the same class.
Both of you will work as a team to do a presentation?
Yeah.
All right. Anything you'd like to say?
It was fun.
Oh, is it? Did you like George's message? Yes.
And I got to meet some new friends.
Make some new friends. And now you can follow each other?
Yeah.
By email? Because you're too young to be on Facebook?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much to you. Okay. Have a safe trip back tomorrow.
All I need are the shoes on my feet, the clothes on my back, enough food to eat, a safe place to live, to grow strong and free. And I'll make my way, I promise. When a child is born into this world, it's a time of hope for all the life may hold. You want to protect, keeping safe from harm, and nurture their dreams, be sheltered from the storm. This is our time, this is our place. We're reaching for a guiding hand. We need need you more each day. Canada, there's so much at stake. For the future, please help keep the promise. But there are too many children in our world with sadness in their hearts from dreams unspoken, and empty words will never feed the ones whose trust has been betrayed, whose promise has been broken. This is our time, this is our place. We're reaching for a guiding hand, we need you more each day. Canada, there's so much at stake. For the future, please help keep the promise. All I need